So it wasn't hard for me to connect the dots and say,
Right.
okay, we know everything going on, and there's just this Ada-sized hole in the history there. And so that's one of the frustrating things for me and for Cinnamon in the book of saying, just because there isn't anything written, we know she was there. So why don't we try to see how we can fill in that gap? But in the book, I have the vignettes all, I have Cinnamon learning about it from a bartender across the bar, having a cocktail, talking about it. And that was my way of sort of saying, we don't necessarily need to know exactly what the truth is, but her story has been passed down through bar lore, and that's something that I love, is that
Yeah.
these important stories that just got told across the bar from a bartender to the next person, and that's how they're remembered, and that's how Cinnamon captures it.
Welcome to our latest episode of Book Reporter Talks To, where our guest today is Brisa Carleton, and we are going to be talking about her debut novel, Last Call at the Savoy, which is a Book Reporter Bets On selection. I absolutely love this book. I was thinking cocktails the whole time. I almost brought a little coupe up here with a cocktail in it because it definitely makes me think about spirits and it makes me think about having a cocktail party, not wine, cocktails. So we don't have our review yet. So here's some praise, and boy, is it great. Jodi Picoult said, Last Call at the Savoy is about women taking a rightful place in history, both those who have been admitted by the men who were writing it and those who are unwittingly have excised themselves with their own self-doubt. The true history of Ada Coleman, the real-life female bartender at the Savoy at the turn of the century, is only a silhouette, but Brisa Carleton has made it a lush and three-dimensional and relevant to ladies today who still fight to be seen. Lift a cocktail to this debut. That's the part where I was supposed to hold the glass up. I don't have the glass. Next, Fiona Davis says, Carleton beautifully pairs a lush, sophisticated setting with a heroine who is hilarious, yes, complicated, and an absolute delight. I only wish I could have jumped into the story to join Cinnamon on her quest to uncover the truth behind the mysterious female bartender who ruled the Savoy's watering hole during its heyday. Brimming with romance, fueled by cocktails, and calamity, this is an exhilarating, tender read that will leave you smiling. And I completely agree. It was one of those books that I was just sitting down and reading, smiling, looking for a cocktail, looking for recipes for cocktails. And with that, welcome, Brisa. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol.
So let's start by you giving us an overview of Last Night at the Savoy. Last call at the Savoy. I want to hear what you say about it.
So, Last Call at the Savoy is about an aspiring New York writer named Cinnamon, and she wanted to be a writer, but tragically lost her parents, and it derails her. And so she's sort of adrift and drowning her sorrows in parties and cocktails and boys. And her sister has moved to London and is struggling with a difficult pregnancy and calls Cinnamon over to London to help. And so Cinnamon jumps on a plane and they are holed up at the iconic Savoy Hotel in London. And while Cinnamon's sister, Rosemary, their parents owned a bakery, you
I love
think
it.
I'm crazy. um, while Rosemary is on bed rest, Cinnamon is sort of rattling around this historic hotel, of course, finds her way to the bar. There, first she meets Kit, who's an attractive historian who's
Mhm.
writing a history of the Savoy, and he starts to tell her a little bit about all the incredible stories and people that walk those halls, and so she's kind of interested in that. But then she meets the late night bartender who tells her about a real life woman named Ada Coleman, who was the first celebrity female mixologist. She worked in the Savoy's American bar starting in 1903 when women weren't even allowed inside cocktail bars.
Right.
And she was this incredible, charismatic personality, and Cinnamon is intrigued. But when she goes to Kit, the historian, and says, "Oh my gosh, are you going to put this real life woman in your book?" He says, "Oh, well, there isn't really much about her." And this sends Cinnamon on a mission to write Ada Coleman back in history. But along the way, so that's a piece of it, and we get little vignettes and snippets of Ada's story.
Hmm.
But along the way, it's also very much a story of sisterhood and the two sisters, how they reconnect, how their relationship dynamics change as Rosemary, who's always really taken care of Cinnamon, needs Cinnamon's help, and Cinnamon has
Hmm.
to step up and sort of come to terms with her grief and also come of age and mature and realize that, her sister needs her. And so there's a really touching story there.
Yeah, it's it's sort of like the side story, the main story, then the side story. It goes back and forth, back and forth. So where was the kernel of the idea for this book? Like I always say, you're making a corn cob, but how do you start making the corn cob,
Yes.
you know?
So I was, they say write what you know.
Right.
And I was sitting at this very bar at the Savoy Hotel. I travel a lot for work, and I was sitting there and I was looking at the cocktail menu. I love cocktails. And there was a little footnote in the cocktail menu about Ada Coleman. And this was years ago. And so I was intrigued and I immediately went and Googled her, and 30 seconds later realized there was nothing. I mean, there was like a little tiny mention, and I thought, oh, that's too bad. I'd be curious to know more about her. And just sort of logged the idea. And then years later, when I thought, oh, I might want to try my hand at writing a novel, and I was taking a 90-day novel writing course and thinking about what I wanted to write about. And Ada Coleman popped in my head again. And I thought, okay, I know I want to write a contemporary story, but how do I weave in this real life person? And sadly, I went back and I thought, okay, this is years later. Surely there's more about her now. No, there wasn't anything new. It was all the same, like just little tiny article. And so that really, much like Cinnamon in the book, that set me off to say, okay, how do we tell this story?
How do we still, so where did you end up finding information about her? Where was this deep dive? Because you're right. They said there was nothing really about her. She's a footnote. She's literally a footnote in the book. So where did you go?
So I approached it two different ways.
Mhm.
First, the Savoy Hotel in London actually has a full-time archivist, which is really remarkable and really a testament to how much the leadership at the hotel values their history, because I don't know many, if any, hotels that keep a full-time archivist on staff.
Yeah.
And so I met with her, and I mean, she also admitted, she's like, yeah, we don't have a lot, but she's also very passionate about telling Ada's story. But then I went there are a lot of books about the Savoy. And so I
Mhm.
went and read all of those. And one of the points I try to make in the book, because we see this so often with women who have been forgotten in history, there is a ton written about the Savoy during this era. 1903 to 1925 is when she worked there. What's happening in London, all of that. We know that she was the head bartender. We know that she was at the center of everything. So it wasn't hard for me to connect the dots and say,
Yeah.
okay, we know everything going on, and there's just this Ada-sized hole in the history there. And so that's one of the frustrating things for me and for Cinnamon in the book, of saying, just because there isn't anything written, we know she was there. So why don't we try to see how we can fill in that gap? But in the book, I have the vignettes all. I have Cinnamon learning about it from a bartender across the bar, having a cocktail, talking about it. And that was my way of sort of saying, we don't necessarily need to know exactly what the truth is, but her story has been passed down through bar lore, and that's something that I love, is that
Yeah.
these important stories that just got told across the bar from a bartender to the next person, and that's how they're remembered, and that's how Cinnamon captures it.
And you think about how long ago that was, and this is still the lore that's being told about
Yep.
this person because of what they did during that time. The hanky panky, all the different cocktails she came up with.
Yeah.
Did you consult the Savoy cocktail book as you were writing? Because
Absolutely.
I'm now dying to get my hands on that book. I'm going to order that book, I swear.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's thousands of cocktails, and that's another big key element of the book, is that we know or believe that Ada invented many of the cocktails in that book, but she's only credited with one. And the bartender that just for only a few years worked beneath her, and we know that he did not like working for a woman, that his name is the only name on the book. So
Mhm.
my not so secret goal is that someday, as people read the book, as Ada's real story gets out there, that someday maybe there'll be an edition of the Savoy Cocktail book with her name
With her name on it.
back in its rightful place.
It's funny. I'm not a big drinker. I mean, and in fact, one of my friends goes, "How long have you been sober?" And I said, "No, no, no. It doesn't have to do with that." I said, "I just am not a big drinker." But when I drink tequila. My husband goes,
Yeah.
"Of course." He says, "And I don't drink tequila with my wife because I'd be under the table." He says, "But my wife, she's gonna make anything." But over the holidays, I always like to come up with a drink that's going to be like our signature drink we're doing over a holiday. Or I say, okay, we're going to go try this or try that. And my younger son worked at a bar when he was in college. So I always say to him, you're squeezing the limes, like you know how to do all
Yep.
this stuff. So I just send him over to like make me a carafe of whatever we've come up with. But I'm not usually, but you have made me want to try all these cocktails. I'm downstairs, we have a full bar in our house. And I just want to go down and say, I haven't tried gin like since college. Let me go try this again and see what happens. Or
Yeah, I mean, mixology truly is an art. I mean, it's different than just throwing, tequila and soda together, or like
right,
the like
right.
it, and that's what is so remarkable. It's being a mixologist is much like being a chef. You have to get the
Mhm,
right balance. You have to do all these
mhm.
things. And the other thing I should say is because people all the time say to me, "Oh, I don't drink," and so they kind of look at the book. I mean, the book has a martini on the cover. But one of the things I love is that there's this huge culture now of mocktails because
Yes.
for me, the cocktail culture is not about the alcohol. It's about the ritual of being at the bar, being in these beautiful, often historic settings, the elegance of sitting there having a conversation shoulder to shoulder. I feel like it's a great like it levels the playing field when you're sitting at a bar. Anybody could be sitting there.
Hmm.
And so I do like to clarify that I mean I love a martini, that's my drink of
Yes.
choice, but
Yes.
but a mocktail you can achieve much of the same experience. It's about that ritual of sitting in those at a bar in those places.
And it's about creating with mocktails because I make those all the time. And
Completely.
then it's the glass. It's having
Yeah.
the right glass to put everything in. We're having a party this summer and it was outdoors. So I didn't want glass by the pool. So I sat there and I was like, I've got to get plastic glasses like overnight. And, I was
Hmm.
like, what am I going to do? Because it's about the glass. It's the shape of the glass. It's what you're going to do.
Absolutely.
Everything completely matters. And I have coupes in I have like crystal ones. I've got other ones, and you've made me want to go dust them off and take them out of the closet and say, what kind of drink? Maybe I'll do something for Thanksgiving. What drink could I serve in these that would be special and different? And I think that
I
what you're
mean, it's
bringing
so
out,
elegant. It's so elegant to hold a coupe or a martini glass. It's just, yeah,
yeah, it's just the
that's
perfect
the
thing.
tone.
It's the perfect thing. But I'm thinking of like what you can do, and the book really spurs your imagination about what you could do with cocktails. And I also am always looking like, okay, we've got to get this passion juice or something like that to go in. My husband's like what we're gonna get, and I said, no, 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 just I'm gonna be in charge of this. I'm in charge of this drink. I'm gonna go do this. And even if it's a mocktail, you're right. It's
Yeah.
the presentation and it's the art of putting it together. And people
Yes.
are like, how did that come together? And it's, drink or not. So did the book flow how we read it now, or did you write the sisters part and then weave in? What were you doing? You've got this dual timeline going.
So because this was my first book, it just sort of all flowed out.
Ooh.
What I will say is in early drafts, there was a lot more of the historic, because it's dual timeline, but it really is contemporary, as you know, with little vignettes.
Right,
And
right,
I was so fascinated with not just the history of Ada, but the history of the Savoy, because in my day job, I'm a theater producer.
right.
And the Savoy Hotel was actually built on proceeds from the Savoy Theater. And so I was intrigued by it. There's a massive amount of theater history. So many amazing playwrights and musicians used to live at the Savoy. And so I had a lot of that in there just because I was personally intrigued by that. And as my editor read it, she was like, "Yeah, I see why you think this is fascinating, but it doesn't serve the story." So, I mean, I probably have a whole book about that, but I had to, be
Do a
judicious.
nonfiction book about the Savoy.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, and I put this, I've often said to authors that there's so much that you don't get in the book. Like it's just not going to be in the book, but it's great material. And I know Chris Pavoni did two excerpts of things that didn't happen and published them and said they're free before the book comes out and they're up on my website because you spent all this time writing. So if you really love the Savoy, here's more. Here's
Yeah,
more of what
have a lot more.
I wrote a lot, people. I really
Yeah.
wrote a lot about what's going on. So when you were writing your book, this is your first book. Was this the first idea you came up with to write about, or was there something else you were scheming and didn't work? Because this just sounds so perfect.
So actually, I had another idea first and wrote a manuscript of that, and it's what actually got me my agent.
Hmm.
And but then when we went and shopped we got, a series of rejections, which I totally understand why now, because as part of my exercise in learning to write, I did this 90-day novel where you write an hour a day. And so as soon as I started submitting to agents, I just kept writing an hour a day on a new book, which was this book,
Right.
because I just loved the writing process and it had become part of just my routine. And so after a few weeks of submissions of the first book, I said, "Hey, is this weird? Like, why don't we pull it? I have another manuscript ready." And my agent looked at me like I was crazy.
Hi,
But
I'm
thankfully,
book two. You're supposed
yeah,
to.
yeah. But thankfully, because I had just kept in this discipline of
Yeah,
writing,
yeah, yeah.
she read it. She said, "This is great." We immediately went on submission of that next one and pretty much immediately got the Big Five deal with Hachette. So that,
Wow.
yeah.
It's just like this is the way it worked. This is the way it
Yeah,
goes. And you know what? It is that keep writing. It's keep writing. I interviewed the author of The Correspondent, which is a big book this year, the other day. She wrote 9 complete novels before that book, nine
yeah,
complete novels. And I think it's the power of writing. It's sitting down and applying yourself. I know authors, it's taken 5 years for the book to be written and done. And I think that readers often have this misconception that it's quicker than it actually is because and then the editor gets it, or well, usually the agent gets it and has suggestions, and the editor gets it and
right.
makes suggestions, and then from there it becomes a more fully formed kind of a thing. But
Completely.
you
But
don't,
between all those steps, there are huge waiting times where they have the manuscript.
yes,
And for me, I didn't I wanted to continue to be creative. So that's when I was working on the next book and the next book, and
right, yeah,
it served me
and
well.
then you realize you enjoy doing it too.
Yeah.
You enjoy doing it, and that makes yeah, it's completely
And
different.
I think it keeps, for me at least, it keeps me from being too precious about any one book. You know,
Right,
if you just have one book and this is the book,
right,
I think people can get really wrapped up in that. Whereas for me, it was like, okay, not this book, great. Here's the next one, and while we're working on the next one, I'll fix that one, and then we'll do the next one. And
right.
you sort of build this portfolio, and it makes, for me at least, it made me a lot more flexible with the various works because it felt like, okay, if this one's not for you, then here's another one.
I know one author is very successful that says she has a book in a box and says, "Do not even publish this after I die." Like, never should this see the light of day.
Yeah,
Never, ever, ever should this see the light of day. But I'm not getting rid of it either. And I also wonder, I remember I've asked Fiona Davis, what do you do with all your research books? Like, you've got all these books about the Savoy. Do you have them in like a library in your house? Because you have to keep this stuff. Like, how can you give it away? You
I
know?
know. Oh, no, I do. Like if I'm in Atlanta because I have a book event tonight, but if I was home, you'd see on the shelf behind me, I have all the editions of the Savoy cocktail book. There were some incredible books about the Savoy that I recommend because they're just a great read. When
Right.
people read my book and say, "Oh, I want to know more about that," I send them to these some of these history books because they're fantastic.
Do you have those on your website too? So if anybody
No,
sees
I
the
should put
history
them
there?
there. I will put them
Yeah.
there.
I think it'd be really good because it's like for more reading, because people are always looking for. I've never been to the Savoy. I spent very little time in London. And then now you want to go and you want to see. And you also brought something up to me that has been completely intimidating to me my whole life of just going to sit at the bar and have a
Yeah.
drink because I'm always afraid, well, I'm not going to get hit on at my age, but like you just feel like what's going to happen there. But I love eavesdropping on conversations. And I feel like that's what happens at the bar. That's what's going on there.
Yeah, when I travel for work, I love going and sitting alone at a bar because in the evenings I'll frequently have free time, and if I'm in some fabulous place like London, I don't want to be sitting in my room. I really, and the bar is it's a very safe way to be fully in whatever setting that you're in. But yeah, I mean, it's in most nice cocktail bars you're not going to get hit on, like,
Right.
and bartenders at all those places are very aware of who is there. And so I never feel like something bad is going to happen. I feel actually very safe. Like, oh, there's a whole staff here that is
That's
going to keep an
awesome.
eye on me. And at the end of the day, my hotel room is just upstairs. So like I'm home, but I'm
Right.
able to be immersed in wherever I am. And so
Yeah.
I really enjoy that.
And you get to hear, especially in a place where you're not home, what people are doing. Where are you
Yeah.
traveling? What are you doing? And there are people who are tourists, but they're people who live there. And I think
Hmm.
the Savoy attracts both, from what I've heard, is that it's just a stop for people. It's a stop for people on the way to the theater or whatever. So
Yeah.
really, really interesting. So so you didn't write both timelines at the same, like you were doing everything. You're just doing the book and say, let's move to Cinnamon, let's move to her sister, let's move to what's going on. And there's action between them as well, because the sister is basically lying in bed. And
Hmm.
not feeling very well, waiting for these twins to arrive. And there's also this story of men and importance of men in people's lives. And then are the women the ones that are really important? And that comes through in your book as well, being there for each other and being there for what's
Hmm.
going on. And I think it's a very important theme that's going through. Now, I know that you didn't have a sister. So how interesting was it for you writing about sisters?
I mean, I loved that. I loved in my imagination being in that relationship with the two of them. I thought that was really, really nice. I mean, I've had best friends and that are like sisters, but I really like the idea of having that person that you can kind of be yourself with, and I think it's part of what allowed Cinnamon to be adrift for so long because she
Mhm.
knew her sister wasn't going anywhere. Her sister was going to
Mhm.
be there for her, and her sister would
Right.
keep cleaning up her messes. And I mean that was there was something fun about that, but that also her when her sister needs her, she's not going to say, "Oh no, I'm off partying." Like she's going to try really hard to try to be there. And so it just felt like that type of bond is so strong, and I needed that for the dynamic between these two women to work.
I really love too when she's getting dressed to go out at night and she's in her sister's closet and she's
Yeah.
going through and she goes, no, the boots, the this. I really love that because her sister's lying in bed. She can't do any of this. And she's going, well, here, go take my coat. Go do this. Go do that. Wait a
Yeah.
second. What are you doing? Wait, I don't know about that. I really love that because that's a real moment of what would happen is I'm going to share, but like, we're going to go with what looks good on you. Like, hold
Yeah.
on. You're not going to go out looking like that. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah, if only I had a sister with a closet full of designer clothes.
I know, right? It'd just be so perfect. It'd be so
Yeah.
perfect. Every once in a while, I'll start buying things recently. My husband will just sit there and he's like, and I turn and I go, no, it's just perfect. I like have to have it. It's like I have to have this thing. I said, because the right thing will come along and you'll need it. So I bought this black tie outfit years ago. I still haven't worn it. And he teases me. And I said, but I have it because if I need it, I'm not going to be able to find it. So yeah, that's
Well,
my
my thing recently has been because this is my debut novel and I've been doing my first bookstore signing and my first book party and my first all these things. I'm like, well, I of course need something special to wear. This is my first whatever. So it's been a
exactly.
great excuse to refresh my closet.
Yeah, refresh is a good word. I like that word. I'm gonna remember that. I'm just refreshing with this top from Johnny
Yeah,
Was. That's what I'm doing. You know?
exactly.
It's the only thing that's happening. And he also gets the things that come in and then go back out. And he goes, I said, well, it doesn't all stay. Some of it just visits. Some of the clothes just
Yeah.
visit. And he thinks that's very funny. And I said, he says, yes, I know how much I go back to the UPS store with the clothes. So so I also loved you had a book party, a fabulous book party. And I love that you acknowledge your mom, who I get to meet, and your best friend from like middle school, which is
Yeah.
like a sister to you, and their reading of the book along the way. So what did they contribute? Because those were like your early readers and your nurturers along the way. What was that like?
I mean, this book would not exist without both of them. I mean, they were very early on the people that I absolutely trusted to be able to read it, but also that because they know me so well and similar to the Rosemary Cinnamon, where like they're not going anywhere, like we're with each other for life. So they were able to be really thoughtful and honest with feedback. And that, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what made the novel, that's what got it to the point that it could be picked up by an agent, that it could be published, was that I was getting honest feedback. And they're also, we all read the similar things, and so their feedback was thoughtful, and they my both my mom and Janet, my best friend, came at it from different angles. And so they would, and it's funny because sometimes they would disagree. And they'd say, I want more of
Okay.
that. No, I want more of that. And that also was very helpful. So I feel incredibly lucky to have that. I think a lot of authors don't have that access to feedback in that way.
Yeah.
And also just to support. Like at the end of the day, they'd say, oh, I hate this and I hate that. But then they'd say, oh, but I loved it so much.
Right, right, right. But I love this. Keep going, keep
Yeah,
going, keep
exactly,
writing, keep
exactly.
writing.
And so, and I mean, they truly read so many drafts. And I think that was the other nice thing of feeling like I could throw spaghetti at the wall because I did. I mean, the Ada story particularly changed so much as I tried to figure out how to put that in. And they would happily just read the whole thing again. And I was really, really grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah, and it is because they get a different perspective as time goes on. They can say we need more of this, or I don't understand her.
Yeah.
I don't see why she's making this decision. I think it's always the big thing that you see with the book is like, why did they do that? You know? So you
Well, and
do,
also to have, my mom who's of a certain generation and my friend Janet who's of a certain generation. I mean, different, they're coming at it, they're at different phases of their life. They're both the target reader for
right.
me. And, like my friend Janet had recently had her kids. And so like how I talk about the pregnancy, I very much got advice from her because I have not been through that process. And so she would be like, oh yeah, no, that's not how that would happen. Whereas, my mom would look at these different things of like what the sister relationship is because my mom has three sisters. And so, they brought very unique, very specific things to it as well.
Love that. Absolutely love it. So you grew up in the Pacific Northwest and then decided to come to New York. So tell us about that leap. I take it you went to school out there, you did everything on the West Coast and then
On
came
the
here?
West Coast. Yeah. But
Okay.
I've always been a theater kid. I always knew I wanted to do something to do with Broadway and musical theater. And so I was running a theater company out in the Pacific Northwest and then thought crazily now, I want to be a Broadway producer. So I'm going to move to New York and do that. And that was
Love it.
15 years ago. And I mean, I guess, they say ignorance is bliss. I think if I had really known how hard it is to do that, maybe I wouldn't have. Similar to writing, if I had really known actually how hard it is to get a book published, I might have been a little, I don't know. But I jumped in with both feet. In New York, I knew very few people. I just started networking and meeting people and asking a lot of questions and going to a lot of shows. And I discovered that a lot of the theater producers, because at that point I knew I wanted to be on the producing side, not a performer, none of that. I'd performed in high school, but realized that was not my highest and best contribution to the theater world. Um, and I learned that a lot of the theater producers hung out at the iconic theater bar Sardi's. And so I started going there. And I mean, this goes back to like this theme of sitting alone at a bar. It really has served me well my entire career. And I would sit there and talk to the bartenders and listen to the theater conversations. And finally, after a few months, they were like, "You're always here. Like, who are you? What are you doing?"
I love
I said,
this.
"I want to be a producer." And they said, "Oh, great." And so they started introducing me to the various people. And so within a couple of months, I went from who's that girl that knows nobody to, oh, that's just Brisa. She knows everybody. And actually, those bartenders were at my book launch party because they're
I love it.
such an important part of my origin story.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
really, without them. And so that also, I think, why in the book bartenders play a really big role between Ada and then there's a contemporary bartender. And because I have such respect and reverence for the role of those longtime bartenders that really it's an incredible role and they can make a huge difference in people's lives and they often do.
And if they're really great, that the bar flourishes. People want to come there. They want to come there when Joe's on the shift or so and so is on the shift, things like that. So tell us what a Broadway producer does. Like everybody goes, oh, I want to be a Broadway producer. What is the producer? What's the role of the producer?
So the producer is like the CEO of the Broadway show. So they're ultimately the person that's running all the everything from hiring the cast and the musicians and the crew to working with the creative team and the directors to managing all of the marketing and the ticket sales. And so I came on as a co-producer, which is basically a role where you work under the main producer, which was great because it's especially 15 years ago, it was very opaque and very hard to learn what producing was. And
Hmm.
you had to find somebody that was willing to bring you onto their show. And as part of that, you needed to help raise the money for the show. And
Right.
I didn't have any money, so I had to go out and raise the money and which also was a whole adventure. And
Yeah.
but these shows are really big business and I loved learning the business side of it and I loved being able to stand at the back of the theater every night and just sort of soak it all in. And thankfully, because I was willing to ask questions and because the people that I was working with were very generous with information and helping me, I was able to go up that learning curve relatively quickly. And within 2 years of being there, got my first Tony, then my second Tony Award,
Wow.
and then I got invited to be part of Hamilton, and that completely changed my life.
That changed your life. Yeah. So were you a producer, a fun, what were you doing for Hamilton? What was your role? And with
Hamilton, I was just an investor because
Master?
that was a very tight producing team.
Right.
They actually didn't need to bring anybody in, but because people who had built relationships with them, they invited us to be part of it. And I mean, I was completely honored to do that. And that had been, 10-year relationship or
Right.
something like that. And, that's it's also a real testament to the community of Broadway. And
Hmm.
that's been a fun thing about writing is just starting to get embraced by the writing community.
Right.
And I've been really happy to find that it's very warm, very generous, just
Hmm.
like the Broadway community has been.
Yeah, it's people want to help you. People want to, and you'll be asked, and you'll remember what it was like to be doing the asking.
Yeah.
It's that that flip side of things. It's interesting too because there is a hierarchy also on Broadway. Like the so and so's own the theater, and if
Yep.
they want the theater for something else, and if you don't play the game, and I know someone who didn't play the game there, and the show didn't work because
Yep.
they're not going to help you, and you really need to understand that cooperation of what's going on. And I see it in your writing because you write about the cooperation between the sisters in a lot of ways. And you write about the cooperation of what happens in the bar and at the hotel. So you understand that where you have to stand back and where you have to go forward. Where, the guy you've got your eye on is out with somebody else. But how are you going to handle that? What are you going to do? And you do that. So I see the role of what you do because you're constantly trying to figure out it's a strategy besides doing just a thing. It's a strategy, and you've got to figure out the strategy.
Well, and Broadway also very much influenced why I chose the Savoy and the American Bar because since the Savoy Hotel it was the first luxury hotel ever in London because nobody at that time was going on vacation in London. They're like, it's rainy. Why would we go there? But because it was built by theater producers, they approached everything about the hotel like it was a show. And that's part of why Ada Coleman, this charismatic woman, got hired to be the bartender because they thought, oh, how fun. She can put on a show. This is unique. People will come to see this. And
Right,
so I love that because I do think the best hotels, restaurants, bars feel like a show.
right, right. You're putting out something all the time. And what's the attitude? We had a favorite restaurant that we used to go to on special occasion. We went recently, and they said there's a new chef, and we just looked at each other and go, "It's not the same." And
Yeah.
you realize that that is the person that's shaping so much of what's going on, and that's the person that's shaping your experience. And you either are going to fall into it, and sometimes they're new and they just need to find their way. But and you're seeing this in the story as well because she's finding her way at the same time of what's going on.
Well, and
So
it's all live entertainment. I mean, that's the thing. I think people don't think about sitting at a bar, sitting at a restaurant, sitting at a Broadway show. It's all live entertainment. And I think more and more people are craving that. They want that human interaction but it has to be done well. To your
well,
point, you go to a restaurant, you know when it hasn't been done well.
well, you also know when you throw a party and it's a great party and things actually like people are meeting each other that haven't met each other before and enjoying a conversation. And there are times where I throw a party like on 24 hours notice or 48 hours notice and say, okay, we're going to do this. If you can come, great. If you can't, well, if it's 8 or it's 20, I don't care. I'll figure it
Right?
out. And
Yep.
my husband's always like, who's coming? And I said, I'll figure it out later. It's like sometimes
Yeah.
inviting people from publishing. And invite some people that don't know each other. And you might be have somebody who's really quiet because they're young, but they're getting to meet everybody else. And that's what you're seeing at the bar is like she's going down and she has a friend in the bartender and he's telling her a
Hmm.
story. So I don't know. It's just really interesting, but it's different working on Broadway and writing alone, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there you have a team. Here you're like me by myself.
Well, and I think that's why I really embraced having these writers and editors. And I will say, having worked in development of musicals where if you need to make an edit or cut a song, I mean, you're maybe having to shelve an entire, thousands of dollars of costumes or replace entire characters or hours that have spent learning a dance routine that no longer exists. Like for me, when it came to editing a novel,
Wow.
I'm like, oh, you just highlight and hit delete. Like this is way easier.
You don't have to deal with any personalities. You don't have to talk
No.
to anybody they lost their job. You don't have to do anything like this. Yeah, and they
And
really
that's
like
very
that for
appealing to me about the writing. It's like that there are much fewer the characters don't get their feelings hurt when their scene gets cut.
And it's interesting because you always think like the show's the show. And I don't think you're like there's so much that comes in and out of the show that is really interesting along the way.
Oh yeah. I
Like you sit there and go, I remember that dance scene. Glad we cut it. It was good. It was good we
mean, the
did that.
ending of Hamilton changed dozens of times. I mean, all of Hamilton did, but I mean, the ending in particular changed drastically in the years and months and even weeks ahead of opening.
Wow. And while you were an investor, were you seeing it along the way as well? When you invest, do you go to, I mean, I know there are nights before, opens, like I forget what they're called. I'm spacing.
Yeah,
But
the
if you do those
previews.
evenings, but there's the press, there's the night the Times is going to be there. There's the night that
Yeah.
so and so is going to be there. So were you involved like in all those, like how many times did you see the show before the show
I
came
saw it
out?
many, many, many times. But Hamilton was a little different because it was this juggernaut from when it started at the Public Theater and coming into Broadway. But the show, another example of a show that I was more involved in is this show because I was a co-producer on it. It was Beautiful, the Carole King musical.
Right, right, right,
And that one was fascinating because it had several presentations in New York where they were working on the script. Then it went to San Francisco on what is called an out-of-town tryout, where they try it in front of an audience that is, far enough from New York that it's, apart that New Yorkers won't come see it and the New York
right,
reviewers hopefully won't come see it. But it's an audience that is similar in sensibility. And that was another one where the ending of that show just wasn't landing. And Carole King's story is amazing, and they just couldn't get that right, and just kept trying, and then when they finally got it right, it made the whole show click, and it ended up being a huge hit.
right.
But that was very interesting because it was her relationship with her husband who became her ex-husband, but
Mhm.
they were writing partners, and just how to tie the knot on that relationship, or tie the bow on that relationship.
And then undo it and then untie
Well,
it.
undo it and then yeah, yeah. And at the end, I mean, if at the final one that they ended up with was him apologizing to her, and there was just no way to know that that is what the audience needed. They kept the creatives kept testing different. Does she, walk away from him? Does he come? Do they get back together? Like, how do you make it work? And finally, it was just a matter of him saying, "I'm sorry,"
Oh,
and
that
suddenly
was it.
everybody was like, "Yes, that's all we needed."
So they closed the show.
Yeah,
Remember, she used to sing with Paul Simon. They used to both come into the studio on Broadway and actually had an office in that building, the
yeah,
Brill building.
yeah.
And they used to go in and record there together. His two kids were queens, da da da. And it was just so interesting to think about what it must have been like to be 16 years old and coming into the city and doing these kinds of things and just saying, I'm going to give it a try. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's like I don't know. It's interesting. You go to a lot of theater, though. I hear that you're big on just seeing everything, so you can see what's going on. So, is there something right now that's you really think is fabulous? Just out,
I'm really excited. So the theater season runs basically, I mean, it's year round, but fall until the Tony Awards in
right,
June. So
right,
that's considered a Broadway season. So
and
we're
then
at the
something's closed the next week. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it happens. But so we're
Yep.
we're at the beginning of the Broadway season. I see every show. I'm fortunate enough to be on the governance committee of the American Theater Wing, and so I get to vote for the Tony Awards now. So
Wow.
that's a relatively new development that I'm very honored to get to do that. But so there are some really exciting shows. So I'd say the two that I'm most excited about right now are both revivals, actually. One's called Chess and
Hmm.
one's called Ragtime. And they're both fantastic. Patty Callahan Henry was in town in New York the other day. We went to Ragtime,
Oh,
and
nice.
she didn't know the show, and it was fun to I could sing the whole thing to you, and it was fun to watch
From
her.
start to end. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun to watch her get blown away by it. It was very cool.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. So you also have Prince Albert of Monaco requested that you join the foundation to land. This is like this is some resume, guys. To lead philanthropy efforts in theater, dance, and film on behalf of his mother, Princess Grace Kelly. So tell us about that. What did you do in that role?
So when I got the call, I was doing my theater producing, and I got a call from the Princess Grace Foundation. That was a foundation created when Grace Kelly tragically died. She had been supporting artists, theater, dance, and film artists kind of quietly. And so when she died, her family, the princely family of Monaco, wanted to create a foundation to continue that work in a more formal way. And so it had been going on for 30 plus years. And so I got a call and they said, we want to introduce Princess Grace's legacy to a new generation. We want somebody that's very connected in the arts and philanthropy world, but that also can think entrepreneurially about how to make sure that her impact is continuing. And so they flew me to Monaco, and I had an interview with the prince.
Oh my
I mean,
goodness.
in the palace. I mean, you can't make this up. It was crazy. And He's a wonderful guy. It's an amazing family, and I was really honored to get to steward Princess Grace's legacy for 5 years. And then I recently transitioned to be on the board of directors there, so I'm still very involved. But yeah, running it day to day for 5 years was quite an adventure. And it's what allowed me to do all this traveling because I was traveling all over the world,
Right.
promoting Princess Grace's incredible legacy. And I have to say to be traveling and talking about this woman who was just an incredible icon in philanthropy, in fashion, in the
Mhm.
arts. I felt very fortunate.
Yeah, she'd been one thing and then became another thing. And I think
Yeah.
that's it's interesting in your storytelling as well, because you see somebody who changed so much during their lifetime of what
Yeah.
was going on, what was happening. So you've got this real entrepreneurial spirit in you. You've definitely had that. You probably had it your whole life as well. And you've also been applying it to actual spirits. You have a literary, in fact, I knew of you before that because my friend Kim was out in Colorado. I knew your friend out there. And she says,
Yes.
there's this literary spirit. You think you can do anything with reading groups? And I was like, I gotta think about this, Kim. You know what I mean? But it's this premium vodka created for by book lovers for book lovers. So tell us about this because it's another part of your story. And boy, does this play into the cocktail world.
Yes. So, not surprisingly, I love cocktails, and I wanted to start like a fun business, and so I was trying to think of what it would be, and I was talking with my husband, and we were trying to like brainstorm what would be fun, and thought, oh, maybe it'd be fun to start a vodka brand because I'm a vodka drinker, and so are a lot of my friends. And then I thought, what if we themed this around books? Because my favorite things to do are to read and to gather people around a cocktail and talk about books and all of that. And so I thought, perfect, let's make literati spirits, theme it around classic literature. So we have a Pride and Prejudice line so far and a Great Gatsby line,
Okay.
and lots of other ideas for where to go
Uh-huh.
from there. But we thought, okay, best case, we create this vodka brand and it's hugely successful with book lovers and it's at every book club and every book festival. And worst case, we have 30,000 bottles of vodka that we can enjoy with our friends.
It's gonna
So
go one
there
way
was
or the
really no
other.
downside.
Right, right, right. And how did you find someone to make the vodka? Like, what's the process of that? It's like, okay, wait a second. I want to make vodka. Let me think how I do that.
So I will admit I'm a bit of a vodka snob,
All right.
and I'm very particular about premium vodka. And so I actually worked with a lot of different distilleries before we found the one that was just right, and found one in Colorado Springs. And it's a wheat vodka. It's really pure, really premium, really crisp. Any vodka connoisseurs out there, I think will enjoy it. We also have a series of flavors, so which we also themed around the characters.
Okay.
So like the Elizabeth Bennet flavor is called Lizzie's Lavender Lemonade because
Okay.
it's the summer and the outdoors. And in Pride and Prejudice, or in Great Gatsby, Gatsby's is blueberry basil because it's like the green for the green light and like the blueberry for kind of like the blues and the jazz. But I think our friends really enjoyed. We had to do a lot of flavor tastings.
Tasting. Rough to be friends with this
A
woman.
lot,
Really
a lot, a lot.
tough, tough. What I was thinking is you could do a mini set of each of I mean, I would love to see something like that go out and then people
Yeah.
can just try it. It's a flight. You're going to do a flight
Yes,
of your vodkas.
a great
So
idea.
there's
Yeah.
my idea for you.
Thank you.
bringing you the flight of vodka idea because somehow when people go out, they love to be able to try a flight of different beers, a flight of this. So think about all different vodkas in little bottles going out. I mean, your
I love
airport
that.
size bottles. There you
Yeah.
go. There's the idea for the day. So what
You
do you
always have so many ideas. I love our conversations.
we always have fun. We always like,
Yeah.
let's go invent something new. Let's go do
Yes.
this. Was there one ingredient in one of Ada's list of cocktails that surprised you? Were there things that I never thought about that? I never, and also thinking of that in 1906. We're not thinking about it now. We're thinking about that ingredient was something that people found. I mean, I think people are rather pedestrian and boring right now in what they put together. And instead, there, I felt like she was trying something and like the hanky panky. That's not things I would
Yeah.
think about putting together. So I'm
Yeah.
talking, you talk. Tell me what you
Well, and I
think.
should say the hanky panky, when I say that name, people laugh because it means something different now. But back in the
Yes,
day when she invented it, it meant like a magic potion. And as opposed to,
doing hanky panky, doing
today's.
hanky panky.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I have a
exactly.
hanky panky, and then a guy looks at you like, wait, what is she saying here? She's communicating something to me at the bar. Yeah. So it was a
Yeah, and
different thing.
the spirit that surprised me, and I'll have to look up the name. It's in the book, but it has a hard to pronounce name, but it was a spirit that had cyanide in it because it was based on a nut that
Yeah.
if the bottle was left too long, it would sort of the ingredients would settle
Yeah.
and the cyanide portion of it would actually settle so that if you ended up drinking the end of the bottle, there could be a lethal amount of cyanide in it. And it's a common cocktail ingredient. And when I was looking it up, I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. They did not remove the ingredient that had the cyanide until 2013. So there are literally still bottles out there
That
that
happened
have this liquor that
2013.
like would have that in there.
Yeah. And you think about all the warnings that we get. Like if you're pregnant, don't drink this. If you don't want to die, don't drink this as well.
Yeah.
Don't
But
have the last drink in the bottle. I'm going
yeah,
to finish that
exactly.
bottle off. Okay, yeah, you are going to finish it off
Yeah,
completely. That's going to finish you. So also you bring in a very almost like not big thing that Ada was gay, and it was. How do you think that ensured that her story was hidden? Like I was thinking that at that time, is that one of the reasons because she didn't have a traditional life, and I as I was reading, I was when I got to that part, I'm like, is that one of the reasons her story got hidden because she wasn't a woman of the time?
right.
Am I making sense? Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's something, I mean, that's the common belief is that she was, but we don't know that for sure because
Mhm,
we
mhm.
just don't know that much about her. But what we do know is she, in addition to her work at the bar, she would host cast parties and theater people at her home, and a lot of the people she was known to be very close with were fellow members of the gay community.
Right, right.
And so that really was her circle. And then the fact that she was an unmarried woman who worked in the bar from age 25 to 50 that was very unusual, so
Yeah.
it if you sort of look at those clues, it seemed like that might have been, and also, I mean, that was not uncommon at the time
Right, right.
that,
It was
we
not
say, oh
talked
my
about.
gosh, how rare. It wasn't rare at all.
It wasn't
Women
rare at
lived
all. It wasn't
together and
really
yeah.
rare at all. It was like, not this like, kind of thing at all. So was the title always Last Call at the Savoy? Was this always the title? I'm just gonna try and see if I can.
No, and I'm trying to remember what some of the, I mean, the Savoy was always in the title,
Right.
but we played around with a lot of things, but you know, definitely wanted it to very much use bar language.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, yeah, that's what we came to. Although what I will say is the cover was always the cover. This was the first
I was gonna
cover
say, was that the first cover?
that the
Okay.
publisher submitted,
Okay.
and they originally had said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna, we'll send you several versions." But they said, "Before we send you several versions, let's just send you this one because we think we might have nailed it." And my agent and I both looked at it and we're like, "Yep,
That
nailed it."
nailed it. It completely nails it. It completely nails it. No, it's beautiful.
And I
Absolutely.
had a fun, I went to the Savoy, the Savoy Hotel's been very supportive of this. And so actually I went, people asked me if that's me, which it isn't, but I
Yeah.
went and in the American bar at the Savoy and recreated that photo. I got a green dress and the book and
Oh,
I
I love it.
and recreated that photo.
Oh, I want to see that picture. That's like
Yeah.
great. I love that you did that. It's a reason to go
It's
shopping.
on my Instagram.
I had to go shopping. I had to go
Yeah.
shopping. So I had the dress.
Yes, exactly.
And you know what I really like too? A lot of times I'm reading is Last Call Savoy, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
It really works the way the words are like, there or whatever. So the audiobook is narrated by Christine Lakin. So what about her voice work for you as a narrator? Because I could picture you being super picky because you've done Broadway all these years and
Yes.
voice matters so much. Like sometimes it's like nails on the chalkboard. So you've got to have the right voice.
Well, and not just Broadway, but I am an audiobook listener. Like that
Mhm.
is how I do most of my reading these days is with audio because I travel. And so I can be in a taxi, walking through an airport, all of that and be immersed in a book. It's amazing. And so one of the coolest pinch me moments in this publishing process was getting the audio auditions and
No.
hearing so many of these because I listen to so many audiobooks, I know so many of these voices intimately and I love them. And so hearing so many of these voices read a snippet from my book, I mean, I'm gonna save, like if I could like frame an audio caption, like I'm
Yeah,
gonna save those forever.
these are the runs of what my book was. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, it was just amazing hearing some of these. But really, Christine Lakin just I mean, it came down to who best, it's kind of like casting a Broadway show. It doesn't matter, who you love the most as a person or for other books they've read. It was who is the voice, really primarily of Cinnamon, because she's the main
Right.
character, who's really strong with the various accents for the British characters, all of that. And Christine's voice just shined. Like it was no question that
Which,
it was the right pick.
and since you're such a big audio listener, that's how you enjoy so many books. Did you read your book aloud to yourself to hear how it sounded?
I didn't read it aloud, but as I was writing, I was hearing it in my head like an audiobook. And I actually think that really helped me as a writer. Like I think if I hadn't been listening to books, I might not have transitioned to being a writer because I've always been a reader, but I've never been a writer. But I think something about being immersed in the audio of these books is what made it easier for me to put it out on a page because it felt like I was listening to a book as the characters are talking to me in my head.
And it's like you know how to cut the words to make it sound right. You know the sound that you're looking for. And
Yeah,
because sometimes people say, I just can't believe I said that word like 12 times. I can't believe I did that like 12 times, but you only hear it when you're reading it. But
right.
your talent is I've done this a lot. I've done this in a show and no, we should cut that because we've already said it 12 times, you know?
Right.
We don't
Yeah.
need the 13th.
That being said, as much as I heard exactly the way, the intonation and the rhythm of all of that, hearing somebody else read it out loud was different because, she had different takes on certain things and
Yeah.
which is just like any kind of acting. There's all kinds of different ways to say something. So that was kind of fun too, to listen and be like, at first say, oh, that's not how I meant it to be. And then being like, oh, but I kind of like it that way.
Right, right, right. Kind of like it.
Yeah.
Well, since you have listened to it, I'm going to pull an audio clip to put at the end of the podcast. Is there something you think that I should ask for? Because they were just asking me what clip I want. Is there something?
I think the clip of when Cinnamon first arrives in London at her sister's hotel room, and
Yeah,
they're sort of bantering and they're driving up to the hotel. I think that sort of gives a sense of this arrival at the Savoy.
it's the sense that it's a taste of what's going on. And I said, I think a bar scene is not going to work because that's later. Like I think we've got to set up the story from there. So, okay, you're always working on something. So you're working on a next book, or have you already finished? Knowing you, you probably finished the next book or in the
Yeah, so
following.
I've finished another manuscript. I have another one in the works, and I would say the theme of all of my books is, I mean, if possible, to get the cocktail or liquor theme. I have a book about the Champagne region.
Right.
I have another book that has a vodka theme, but also about these fabulous destinations and fabulous hotels.
Hmm.
And part of that is because I just think there's such interesting history at these places, and also because it just requires me to do so much in-person research.
Must go. I must go. Must
When
go.
all my friends say, "Oh, you're at that hotel or you're having that cocktail," I say, "I know
Yeah.
I'm working. I'm
Right. I'm
working so
working.
hard."
Don't understand. I've got
Yeah,
to go down to that bar right now and have a
exactly.
cocktail. And it's definitely a tax deduction. And please, believe me, it's going to end up
Yeah,
on.
there you go.
I can show you the page. And you know what? If I cut the page, I can still show you the page. I'll still
Yep.
show you where it was. I mean, I was talking about that. And it is like when you go to a place, I mean, I haven't been out to the wine country in California. I haven't done this, but when you go, you walk away. I think it's 900 grapes. I think that was Laura Dave's book, 900 grapes, because that was what went into a bottle of, I think it was red wine. And I walked away like I was telling the people that for a long time. That was my claim to fame is I knew
Yeah.
that one line. But
Yeah.
wrap a story around it then. Wrap a story about what you're doing.
Well, and that's how I came to writing a book about the Champagne region because I would enjoy champagne, but I had no idea how difficult it was to make and how involved and and the intricacies of the Champagne region in France and all the little towns. And so, I mean, I definitely approach my writing from things that I'm fascinated with. And
Mhm.
one of the most gratifying things for me and why I'm really excited to talk to book clubs and to talk to readers and finally have the book out in the world is when people say, oh, I learned something, or oh, did you know? Like
Right,
as a
right.
reader, I love that when I can take not just a good story, but like take away these little tidbits of real information. And so I love peppering those into my work.
And it's funny because I always say I don't like Chardonnay and I don't like champagne. I'm not, but I realized that when I was sent a bottle of really great Chardonnay,
Yeah.
that's the Chardonnay I like.
Yeah.
And when I sent a bottle of really great champagne, I could definitely do this and enjoy it. And it was
Yep.
really funny. My husband cracked the bottle. I don't know where we were recently. And he goes, "Oh, I've got some champagne. I'll just start pouring it." And I was looking like, and he says, "Yeah, I had it on ice." And I was like, "Really? Were you prepared for this or something?" I
Yeah.
can't remember where we were. Oh, I know. It was Morristown Festival of Books. And one of the authors we were taking, we were having some people for dinner. And I heard her speak on the screen and on the panel, and she says, "I don't like white wine." So I'm texting him because we're going to a BYO place. Bring
Uh,
red, bring prosecco, bring this, and he's like bringing all these things, and he walks in with like this container because I said to him, "We just got to get this right because we don't know anybody's going to drink. It's a BYO, you don't know."
yeah.
It's kind of the fun of it. It was really funny. Always so much fun talking to you. I look forward to doing it again. Thank you for your time today and for sharing the great story behind the book because there's so much to talk about. And for anybody in a book club, first of all, you can drink cocktails and have fabulous cocktails because she's got some in her reader's guide of like, great things to do. But besides it, just the conversation about the Savoy and about the two sisters will make for a really interesting discussion. It's really all there. So thanks for
Well,
joining us today.
thank you for having me. I absolutely love this podcast. I'm so honored to be included. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad. And to everybody else, we look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks to. Thanks for joining us.